Okay, so like I said, we're going to be diving in tonight all about comprehension and really how to break it down. That way you can have a game plan for how you plan out your week. There will be no more of this. I'm just looking through my filing cabinet, looking through my notes, or going across the hallway and asking my teaching partner, hey, what do you have for teaching text structure? That's fine, but I want you to have a purpose for where you put all these activities, okay? So in a week, we're going to talking about a 5-day week. Um, there are specific purposes or objectives that you are going to have for each day of the week. And again, if you own any of my building comprehension units, you know what these purposes are. So there are 5 of them, one for each day of the week. So I'm going to go through what those are. These are all in your freebies. If you download that, you'll be able to follow along. So I'm going to go through each one of them, and I'm going to talk to you really more in depth about what they mean. I get questions all the time. I love this philosophy behind comprehension. I love this, but I want to be able to do it more. I want to be able to do it better. And yes, I love your units, but there's only 17 of them. You know, I have other weeks and stuff that I have to plan. How can I do this on my own as well? And you know what? Absolutely. You should be able to do this on your own. So you should be able to walk away from today's live with this information and with the other freebie that I have given you, and you should be able to do it completely on your own without any of my resources. And I want to, empower you to be able to do that. Absolutely. So again, 5-day week, 5 different objectives for why and what you are planning to do with your students, okay? So I'm going to go through all 5, and then I'm going to go in depth with all 5, okay? So the first one is expose. Day 2, you are going to analyze. Day 3, you are evaluating. Day 4, you're preparing. And then on day 5, you are applying, okay? So here's the problem, and here's kind of the background of all this. If you open up a Basel reader, or even if you don't use the Basel, many teachers have the fault of jumping straight into the deep end when they teach comprehension. Really, when they teach anything, but we're talking about comprehension. So what I mean by that is teachers will jump in straight to the application. So if I'm teaching cause and effect, and I'm wanting my students to actually find the cause and effect of a situation, or I'm reading a text and I want them to find the cause and effect, but I'm not backing up to actually break down that strategy or that skill and teach the things that are needed to identify the cause and effect, that's the problem. That's what teachers are missing. They're missing all of the steps before apply. And you know what? It's hard because when you're having to use the Basel, they make you jump right into the deep end. They make you jump in and have students apply the skill right away. And then no wonder, actually I was talking with a friend tonight who was a teacher. She's actually a coach, and we were having this great passionate discussion about comprehension. And she even said, she was talking with some of her teachers about why they do this great lesson and they use this great graphic organizer, with cause and effect and blah, 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 blah. And then they go to the assessment and they can't answer the comprehension questions, right? Because in that lesson, you were asking them to apply, and then in this lesson, you were asking them to apply, but never did you actually break it down and teach them. So this is like that key, golden key magic that you are going to need in your comprehension lessons, all right? So again, expose, analyze, evaluate, prepare, and apply. And don't try to remember all this. It's in your freebie. Go download that, okay? So anyways, I want to break these down for you a little bit more, talk about what they are, and then I'm going to get into what the better part of your freebie is even, okay? All right, so day 1, when you are starting a brand new skill or strategy for reading comprehension, do not ask your students to try it on their own. Don't. Even if they're teaching 3rd grade, don't. Yes, they may have some background, they may have some schema, but don't push them off the deep end yet. Expose them to the strategy or skill first. So here's what I mean by that. What do you do when I'm trying to expose them? So in the freebie, you'll see this little checklist that I created for you, and that's what we're going to kind of go through. So when you are on day one and you're trying to expose your students to the new skill or strategy that you're teaching, you need to focus on these pieces. You need to identify and define key vocabulary that are necessary for your concept that you're talking about. So if the main idea, clearly it would be main idea and details, or if you want to like talk about titles or whatever words are important. If you're talking about text structure, then clearly you're going to be talking about each of the text structures. You're just talking about the vocabulary, okay? You're going to show students the concept, okay? Show them. Don't just tell them. It better not just be with words. You need to physically show them what you're doing. What is the strategy? What is the skill? What does it look like to do it from beginning till end? You need to use tons of visuals in your first lesson. Get an anchor chart out. Make them a bookmark. They need reminders. They need some place to look, especially on day one and maybe even through day 2 and day 3, that has the reminders of like the vocabulary and what other important things you're talking about in day 1. They need those visual reminders. You need to make sure that in day 1, when you are exposing them, that you are thinking out loud and you are modeling all of the things that are happening in your head out loud for your students. A lot of teachers struggle with this. What I always tell teachers is you need to pretend you're a kid. Be a student and sit there and think out loud. So, oh my gosh, Mrs. Harris is making me, find text structure and I don't understand it. Okay, so I'm da-da-da-da-da. Like, be a student and think out loud and make sure they can hear everything that's going on. All the questions that you're asking yourself, all the times that you look at the visual, they need to know when to look at the visual. You're bringing all those things together and think out loud. You're asking DOK level 1 questions, very basic questions on day 1. And then this is a big one, and sometimes it can't be helped, but try not to use any text. Try to go the more visual route or the physical route of acting things out or use pictures or illustrations. Try not to use a text. And if you do, make it a sentence. One sentence that you are modeling from. One sentence that you are showing them the strategy. Okay? That should be day 1. That's it. Did I ask them at all to make an inference? No. Did I ask them to identify the text structure of a paragraph? No. Okay? I need to have an in-depth lesson that just exposes them to everything. And if that lesson is strong, it's engaging, it's going to really focus on the visuals and the vocabulary and the modeling, they're going to have a solid foundation for the week. And when they get to that apply on Friday, they're going to be able to really relate back and have all of that foundation to build from. So it's really important that you do all of that on day 1, okay? By the way, if you have any questions throughout any of this, because it's different, but it's awesome, please leave them in the comments, and I will absolutely answer every single one of them, okay? All right, so that was day 1, expose. You are exposing the students to the skill or strategy you are teaching. Day 2 is analyze. So now we've started building our foundation. Now I want them to kind of dig deeper, right? I'm not asking them yet to apply the strategy 100% on their own, but we're getting closer, okay? So, and I've got my water, you know me. So when you are having them analyze the new skill or strategy that you're teaching, these are some things that you need to focus on. What are the pieces of the skill and strategy? This may be something you touched on day 1, but now you're really focusing in on it. For example, main idea. Day 1, you probably talked about what is main idea, what are details. Maybe you use some pictures to kind of showcase, like, okay, here's a whole camping scene, but the details may be like the s'mores, the tent. Day 2, now you're looking at the pieces of the strategy. So now you're kind of giving them a strategy for the strategy. So for example, for main idea, it would be looking at the title. You need to look at the title. What are the important repeated words? So see how we're breaking down and looking at the pieces, right? And I'm teaching that all to them. Another really important thing for day 2 for analyze is what questions do they need to be asking themselves to complete the strategy? And this is like one of the big golden highlight that, don't forget it kind of things. Teach your students to ask themselves questions when you're learning strategies and skills in comprehension. So when they're doing the main idea, they should stop and think to themselves, what are the repeated keywords? What is the topic sentence? What does the title show me? They need to know to turn those strategies into questions to ask themselves. And then you're modeling all of that, they're doing it, and then they're getting deeper into the strategy or the skill, okay? You're also looking at what steps, and specifically what sequence the steps are in order to complete the strategy. And then you're just completely picking the skill and strategy apart, okay? They need to know from beginning till end how to do the strategy. They're not doing it yet, but they should be able to sequence everything. If I turn to my student at the end of day 2, I should say to them, how do you find the main idea of a text? And they should be able to say, well, I know the main idea is this, and I know details mean this. And to find the main idea, you do this first, then this, then this, then this. You know what? That right there is a lesson. Have I asked them to find the main idea yet? No. Have I modeled it for them with all of this? Yes. But I'm trying to build that foundation. And if I'm throwing in comprehension on top of all this, can you just imagine their poor little brains being swirled around, right? Okay, so that was day 2. So day 3. So we've exposed them to the strategy or the skill. We've had them analyze the strategy or the skill. Now we're having them evaluate. So an evaluate can kind of go in a few different directions, but it needs to kind of stick to what the word evaluate really means. So here's what you should be doing or focusing on when you plan day 3. You want to try to give them strong examples of the strategy being used and weak examples of the strategy being used, right? So if it's main idea, this is a strong main idea for the story we just read. This would be a poor main idea for the story we just read. They need to see both ends of the spectrum. Then you can do some really cool activities with that. You could have them sort them. You could have them like sort them and then like try to fix some of the bad ones or whatever. But they need to see the poor and the strong. They also, you can have them go through and figure out what steps that maybe you're modeling, or maybe you have it visually all written out, what steps that are being done are correct and which ones are incorrect. So again, they're evaluating the process of what's going on. What changes need to be made to what just happened? That's a great question to have them focus on for day 3. What changes need to be made? This is another one. How could you improve this skill or strategy? So I've done all the work. I've taken the time to model this. How could you improve what I just did? Right? That's a great roundabout way. They're not applying completely yet, but it's a great next step to getting them to figure out and use all the information you're giving them and their error analysis. Error analysis is so rigorous. It's a great way to get them to do that deeper thinking without actually having to apply the skill or strategy yet on their own. So how could they improve what you just did? Are there any steps that are missing? So I just did this. Did I do it right? What did I forget to do? Okay, they're evaluating that process. And this is a great thing, and I love day 3 because it really allows them to practice the skill that I'm working on without actually having to apply it completely. So you gotta get creative with it, but it's so doable. And again, all of my building comprehension units all have a really interesting activity that allows them to do this on day 3. So day 4 is prepare. So now you can tell we're starting to now prepare them to be independent, okay? I've really built a solid foundation, right? Now I'm preparing you. So the best way to think about prepare is I've kind of got one foot in the door and one foot out. Meaning I'm going to give you some support, but you're going to give me the rest. Okay? So it's a partially completed skill where they have to look and see, okay, what's already done for me? What do I need to do to finish it? Okay? A great example would be if you're doing cause and effect and you read a text, and then maybe I have a graphic organizer, and in the graphic organizer, causes on one side, effects on the other. And I need to fill in the chart. I'll give you the cause, you give me the effect. That's a prepare lesson, right? It's almost there. I'm not having them completely just read a text and find examples of cause and effect yet. I'm preparing them to be able to do that. There's still a text involved. I've given you half of the skill or strategy. You need to come up with the other half, okay? So it's partially completed. Another great thing to focus on for this section or for this day for prepare is use sentence frames. A lot of the times I'll take the time to focus on the justification, making sure my students are being able to write and justify the skill or strategy that we're working on, and I'll use a sentence frame. And that really helps prepare them to have to write on their own on day 5 when they're having to justify it. So great examples of sentence frames. Let's see, I'm trying to think of the ones I did today. And I've actually got it right here. So this is the recording sheet from my point of view one for prepare, so you can see the sentence frames. The point of view of the story is blank. I know this because blank. Also, I see the pronouns blank, which tell me that the point of view is blank, right? That's a great thing to give them. That's great support to give them on day 4, because then it prepares them for completely jumping into the deep end on day 5, okay? So, and then it goes back to that give one, get one. I'm going to give you something, you're going to give me the rest. I'm not just pushing you completely in yet. But guess what? Now we're on day 5, and I am pushing you in. But look at all of this foundation we have built for them. They should be fine. And I'm telling you what, you do it, and they will be fine. Because day 5, they're applying. They are fully completing the skill or strategy 100% on their own. No support at all. However, I will say this. This can be done independently or in a collaborative group. And so a lot of times what I will do is that Friday lesson, it will still be in groups or partners. And then the assessment, I will give them independently, okay? So clearly assessments need to be independent, duh. However, day 5, just because it's applied does not mean it has to be independent for that entire day. You can still split it up and make sure they get some more collaborative time and do the whole process of that skill or that strategy on their own before you turn around and give them an assessment. And if you haven't checked out, my building comprehension units all have an end of the week assessment in them as well. So that's 5 days. 5 days of broken down understanding of how you sit and plan for comprehension. So now what? Okay, this is what you do now. You print that paper off and you put it in your lesson plan binder. And then when you go and you collect all of your awesome lessons that you have, and you go and talk to your teammate and get what she has, or you go to TPT and you find what they have, that's great. Do all of that. But when you go to plan it out, I want you to think about the purpose of what you're doing each day. What are you doing on Monday and why? Okay? Are you asking too much of them too soon? Because if so, it's just going to be downhill for the rest of the week, and you're really going to be fighting your battles, right? If you can gradually get them there with very rigorous, very engaging lessons, they will show you tremendously on Friday what they can do, and I promise that. If any of you actually have done an entire full building comprehension unit, all 5 lessons from beginning to end, and you've done the assessment, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what you think about the results of that assessment compared to maybe another assessment you've given, hopefully on the same strategy, but maybe not. So email me or drop a comment below and let me know, because I would love to hear. Okay, so that's not all I have for you tonight. I said I have another freebie, and this is it. So I have created for you, it's kind of like a scope and sequence type thing, but not really. So I couldn't think of a word to title it, so I just gave it my own title. So what you will find in this, and this again is over in the downloads, over across the top, you will find the 5 purposes for each day that we just went through. So if you're catching this now, you're going to want to rewind and make sure you understand what all these words mean. Then down the left-hand side, you are going to find 5 different reading skills, and the other page has 5 more reading skills. So I've given you 10, but what in the world is on this, okay? So what I have given you are basically the objectives that you will do for each day for each skill. I don't know if you realize how awesome that is, but it's pretty darn awesome. So, for example, I'm just going to walk through one of these with you. I don't know which one though. Okay, so for example, let's talk about main idea. I don't know, I just picked one, main idea. So I've given you 5 days of objectives that are correlating with the 5 different purposes, okay? So if you do this objective on that day, you are actually focusing on the purpose, if that makes sense, okay? So for main idea, for day 1, which would be expose, you are defining the terms, the main idea and details, and you're using images to relate the two. So again, it'd be that scene you create for the campsite, and then the details would be like s'mores, the tent, the fishing rods, I actually got it right this time, etc. Okay, do it with images, not with text. Day 2, you're analyzing. This is where you introduce different strategies, okay? So you're looking at the title, you're looking at the repeated words, you're looking at the topic sentence, those kind of things. Again, you're modeling it completely, and you're breaking that down to analyze. Day 3, you're evaluating. And it says determine if a statement is a main idea or detail. That's a great one. So here are a whole bunch of sentences, and we're going to sort them. You're a main idea, you're a detail. They can't tell the difference between the two. How are they going to tell you the main idea of an entire text? Okay, so that's a great way to have them evaluate using that strategy or skill. Day 4 is prepare. So you're going to have them identify the main idea only. No details. Can you just identify the main idea? And then day 5, of course, what is the main idea? Now give me 3 supporting details. Okay, so that is how it's broken down. So I've given you the objectives for each day that correlate with the purposes of building comprehension. And you have it for 10 different skills. So I basically just planned out 10 different weeks of comprehension for you. Or if you're loving this, if you are loving everything that we're talking about with comprehension and the purposes and all of these objectives, guess where these came from? Every single one of these objectives came from the building comprehension units. So if you are loving this, you are going to want to grab those units, because now not only is this done for you, but you have your 5 days of lessons, you have your assessment, you have exit tickets, you have visuals like bookmarks and graphic organizers and anchor charts. You have everything you could possibly need. And I know some of you who are listening right now, you probably already have those, and that's great, but I know there's some of you out there who don't. And right now, it's 40% off. So 17 weeks of comprehension planned for you in this format right now is 40% off, okay? Now that only will last until mid-May, until the unit or the entire bundle is complete. So you're not going to want to wait. I'm just saying. So anyways, it is 9 o'clock, which means my time is up. But I hope you absolutely learned a ton with me. And again, if you're just now joining in, you're going to want to rewind, because we talked all about how to truly break down comprehension to be able to purposefully plan out a week of lessons that are going to get you the results you want from your students. So you're going to want to download your freebie. You're going to want to join my Facebook group, because I've got free webinars coming up in there. And you're going to want to check out the Building Comprehension units while they're on sale. If you love all of this, you're going to want to check those out, because they're truly amazing. If you have questions or comments or anything, please make sure to leave them below. I'm going to go back, of course, and read everything. I don't do that clearly while I'm talking to you, because I can't see it. But anyways, I'm going to go back and reread all that, so make sure you leave that all there. So I hope you loved tonight. If you did, let me know. If you have friends who you think would love this, I know you all have teacher friends, tag them below. Make sure they get to come and see this and watch this. The more the merrier, I always say. And I will see you all next week, Wednesday at 8:30 for our next episode in Adventures of Comprehension. So I hope you had fun tonight. I know I did. Bye, everyone.